And though the ibex would never know this, though its life, like the lives of all ibexes, would go completely unnoticed and unappreciated in the annals of history, it was about to become the sole living witness to a truly extraordinary sight. Something's wrong. Perhaps it was a glint in the corner of its eye, a tiny, almost imperceptible vibration beneath its hooves. Whatever the reason, the ibex was suddenly compelled to lift its head and take in the sight of the vast desert below. There, off in the distance, it spotted a small cloud of dust moving steadily across the twisted beiges and browns. This, in and of itself, was hardly unusual. Dust clouds sprung up all the time, dancing randomly across the desert like swirling spirits. But two things made this cloud unique. One, it was moving in a perfectly straight line, from right to left. Two, it was being followed by a second, much larger cloud. At least it looked that way. The ibex had no idea if clouds of dust could, in fact, chase each other. It only knew that they were to be avoided if at all possible, since they were murder on the eyes. Still chewing, it turned back to see if the others had spotted it. They hadn't. They were all grazing away without a care in the world, noses to the ground. The ibex turned back and considered this strange phenomenon a moment longer. Then, convinced there was no danger to itself or the herd, it went back to its meal, the two clouds moving silently, steadily in the distance. By the time it yanked another blade of grass out of the rock with its teeth, the ibex had forgotten they'd ever existed. Balthazar couldn't see a damned thing. He rode his camel across the desert valley, kicking its sides like mad, his eyes the only things visible through the shemagh he wore to fight off the sun and the odor of the beast beneath him. Two overstuffed saddlebags hung off either side of his animal, and a saber hung from his belt, swinging wildly as they galloped along, kicking up the desert behind them. Balthazar turned back to see how close his pursuers were, but all he saw was the cloud, the same massive, relentless cloud that had been chasing him since Tel Arad, the cloud that made it impossible to tell how many men were after him. Dozens? Hundreds? There was no way to know. It was, at present, a cloud of undetermined wrath. From the direction of that cloud there came a faint whistling, almost like the movement of wind through a ravine. At first it was just a single note, its pitch bending steadily lower and growing louder with each second. This note was joined by another and another, until the air behind Balthazar's head was a chorus of faint whistles, each of them starting soprano and tilting tenor as they grew louder, closer. Just as Balthazar realized what they were, the arrows began to strike the earth behind him. They're shooting from horseback, he thought. None of the arrows had come close enough to cause concern. Balthazar wasn't surprised. Any experienced archer knew that firing an arrow from a galloping horse was akin to saying a prayer with a bow. Even at 20 yards, you had little chance of hitting your target. From this distance, it was hopeless, a sign of either desperation or anger. Balthazar didn't think the Judeans were desperate. They were furious, and they were going to take that fury out on his skull if they caught up to him. After all, the untold legions in that cloud weren't just chasing the thief who'd made off with a fortune of stolen goods, and they weren't after the murderer who'd killed a handful of their comrades. They were trying to catch the Antioch Ghost. It was a nickname born of the only two things the Romans knew about him: that he was Syrian by birth, in which case it was a good bet that he'd grown up in Antioch, and that he had a knack for slipping into the homes of the wealthy and making off with their riches without being seen or heard. Other than those scant facts and a rough physical description, the Romans had nothing, not his age, not even his real name. And while the Antioch Ghost wasn't particularly inspired as nicknames went, it wasn't all that bad either. Balthazar had to admit he enjoyed seeing it among the known criminals painted on the side of public buildings. Always in red, always in Latin. Reward, the Antioch Ghost. enemy of...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.